I do want to go back to, we had a text that came in regarding travel sports and the issues it creates with families. Now, if you look at statistics, here's what we found. Not only is the travel sports industry grown into a $39 billion a year industry, $39 billion. Wow. It's projected to be a $72 billion industry by 2029. And what they found is that 1 in 3 U.S. Protestant pastors, or 36%, said it's never okay to skip a weekly worship service for kids' games. Never okay. It's a big number. And then if you look at parishioners, only 18% say it's never okay. You have a big disparity among the regular attenders and the pastors. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, a number of people commented on this dilemma of what do you do? Because increasingly travel sports happen on Sunday morning. And if you think about it, if you're not a Christian and you have a full-time job, you go, why aren't we using the weekend?
Yeah, you travel on Saturday to get there, and then you play either Saturday afternoon, evening, and Sunday.
Right. It's just another day we're a minority in this country. It's just a day.
And that's what I think we have a hard time grasping, because for so many years, everything was closed on Sunday. You couldn't do anything if you wanted to, and no one would dare schedule a game on Sunday.
Right.
Again, if you separate yourself from your identity in Christ, which is really hard to do, why would a non-Christian care about Sunday morning? They don't. They already do yard work. We drive past their house on the way. They're like, rolling out of bed and mowing the lawn. So all that to say, we got a note from a guy named Brian. Oh, I like him already. He said, I have a hard time with sports on Sundays. My daughter, who's in college now, played travel volleyball. And then she played in college as well. She loved it. All matches were on weekends. Most Sundays during that season were also part of that schedule. I was against that. My wife traveled with her, spending many weekends away from home. I serve at our church in the junior high, as well as small group leader. And once in a while I would go, only if Sunday wasn't affected. After her last season, I looked back and had mixed feelings and thoughts and emotions. My younger son, who is in junior high, plays travel basketball and travel baseball. I started missing every other Sunday affected by games. When Sunday evening came and my son came home excited about all those games, I had nothing to say. I wasn't there. I told the youth pastor. He said, when your son is playing, you should be there. Yes, I'm from a larger church. This, however, shouldn't matter. My kids love the Lord. We teach them about our walk with God and share our walk with them, encouraging them in personal relationships with God. God, comes first. Our church time should not come before our children. This will cause them to never want to go to church. Us putting going to church ahead of them should never happen. There are seasons in life. This childhood season goes by quick. This time can never be revisited. What do we think?
Everybody's kind of waiting.
I don't think that it's putting church above your kids. I think you just take away the option.
What do you mean take what option?
So right now, as it was stated, we do travel sports, and so there's church. And so if I'm going to church, I'm putting that above my kids. I think you start out that travel sports on Sundays is not an option. So it's never you're putting church above your kids. There's not an option for it to be there. I also think that he said that God is number one and church shouldn't be above your kids. Well, church is what God has ordained. It's what God put into place. It's what Christ left us. And it feels that we're taking away the importance of church. That it's just, we just go there for an hour and then we leave and it's fine. And that's really, really taking away the essence of what the church is. The church is for a community of believers. It's to have someone call you out on your sin, to be held accountable, to have iron sharpening iron, for people to hold you accountable, to make you better, for you to make other people better. It's for the teaching and preaching of the word among other believers. Sitting at home, listening to a sermon is not the same as going to church and hearing a sermon with others.
Interesting.
And also, church is so it's together, like our community together, and then also outward. We're ministering to each other, but then we're also ministering outward to unbelievers. And how are you doing that if you're not a part of the church?
Well, perhaps the question becomes, are church communities actually functioning the way you describe they're supposed to? And if they're not, do you blame somebody for going, well, this is just something, I don't know, I guess we don't have to do that?
I think that churches are functioning that way. I think we, as, quote, consumers of the church, are not taking it up on all the possibilities it has.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was Nick Gatsky that was saying a couple weeks ago, you're going to get into church or get out of church what you put into it.
Right.
And honestly, bear with me on this. I think we live in too much of a kid-centered society where it's about their activities and what they want, which, childhood obviously is important. It's short. I think we need to live in more of a family and community-centered society. So kids, they see mom and dad in this community with church. We are continually surrounding ourselves with fellow believers, and kids just kind of integrate into the life that we have already created. We have made this space within the life we've already built for them, as opposed to saying, here are kids' activities and they're completely separate from everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you drew a boundary that I've heard people draw before where, Lauren, you said, travel sports are an option, but not games on Sundays are not an option. But what that does is, the way it's designed, that means travel sports are not an option. Like you can't just miss games in travel sports.
I would say, then travel sports is not an option.
And that's a dramatic statement in
I hear
today's
that.
society.
I understand that.
Especially if your kid's a really good athlete. Now, we've got 5, and we've so far had like 2 that show some athletic ability. And the other ones would not be offended if we said that because they're just not interested in sports. But
well, it wasn't it wasn't an expected thing that we had for them. Like we don't push them to have to do a sport. It's just
or an activity in general.
Yeah,
and we're different in that way because I don't remember having a choice. I was going to take piano lessons. I was going to be in soccer. I did baseball. Like, no one asked me. I think it was just what I was told we were doing. But let's just say Trey is a tremendous athlete. His dad loves baseball. I mean, he might be looking at you crying, Mommy, I want to play baseball. All my friends are playing travel baseball. I'm so good at it. Please let me. Would it be harder in that circumstance, you think, to draw the line?
Sure, it's harder, but our church community and our faith life is a priority in our family. And that's the line for me.
Well, and what you said was all my friends are playing baseball. If you've already established yourself into a church community, then that will be his friends. And he won't be able to say all my friends are playing travel baseball because he has a community at the church that are going to church on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get to this in a minute because we have to take a break. But I think part of the problem is on the other end of it. I tried to hint at this, but if churches aren't able to, and it's not all their fault, it's parishioners too, but if we're not building vibrant, healthy communities where people are holding each other accountable and being vulnerable and transparent, why would you feel bent out of shape about missing it? Like, I'm not certain we're actually building the communities we're supposed to have. And that's why one of the reasons we're not taking it that seriously. How are you doing? Oh, I'm blessed and highly favored. Even though we screamed at each other in the car on the way here. And our marriage is about to fall apart. But no one at church knows. No one knows. We can't tell anyone. We're too embarrassed. It's supposed to be the opposite of that in a church community.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the church's fault.
No,
That's
it's not the
people's
church's fault. Right. But churches contribute to it.
Sure, but I think the churches are providing the opportunities to do these things, and it's us as the people, the congregation, that's not taking part in it. That's not doing our part of being a part of a church.
So then what will you do when you want that and you have a hard time finding it and building it?
Yeah, you either have to be the one to build it and start it, or you have to go find it somewhere else.
Yeah, that's hard. Because, I mean, we've experienced times where we try to build community with people, and you try to get vulnerable, and they're all weirded out by it.
Oh, sure.
Before this break, we were revisiting one of the topics of the week, which is travel sports, and how pastors and people in the pews seem to really disagree with how often you can miss church for travel sports.
Mm-hmm.
With a high number of pastors, like over 30% of pastors saying you really should never miss church for sports. And Lauren brought up, you're in that category. You're like, no, prioritize church community.
Yeah.
440-546-2255. Let's jump to BJ in Cleveland. BJ, what's your thought?
Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Hey.
I believe that your family is your first ministry first. It took a lot of years for me to understand that, okay? Whatever it takes to make sure that that family is healthy and well-rounded, that's what we must do, because we're losing our children to so many other things. And when our children are not nurtured in their activities, they're going to find nurturing somewhere else. First, one point is the church, Little C, is a building. That's where we go and we fellowship with others. But I believe us being the church, the people are the church, Big C, body of Christ. We carry the mission with us, and we can build that community with that team. And it doesn't take a whole lot of harboring on the Bible, showing love, showing compassion, doing those things that we need to do to build the body of Christ.
So if I'm understanding you right, you're saying we can ultimately, you're saying you could miss Sunday worship at your church building, but you could build Christian community in the travel sports family. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jesus didn't stay in one place. He moved around. Some people need that church every Sunday. But if you are studying to show yourself approved, you won't need that. You won't need it every Sunday, because you are equipping yourselves and your families, not only on Sunday, but all other 6 days of the week.
Yeah, BJ, I've heard people talk about how much of a ministry field their travel sports family becomes for them. We've talked to a number of people close to the show about that. The only gentle pushback I'd give you to see what you think on this is the people I know who have their kids in travel sports, they're usually the only Christian family. And so the idea of creating a Christian community in the travel sports team where nobody is a Christian except you're not going to be able to build the type of accountability Lauren was talking about that's so essential for church community. What's your thought on that little gentle nudge?
The accountability is going to come. But if we don't open our mouths to even build relationships, how is it going to come? We are responsible for carrying the mission as well, not just the pastor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wonder if you're absolutely right about your approach to doing travel sports, but maybe not as a replacement for church.
Oh, no. I'd never say that. I'm not saying that. Like I said, sports is only a season.
Yeah.
And you're not going to go, you may go for 8 weeks out of one season. Now, it's up to you on how you balance it, but that's between you and God.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that. I think your family is your first ministry. Think about years past how we've lost our children to a lot of things because we felt like, we have to be in that building. Mm-hmm. And what did the young man Brian say? Our children were sacrificed. He didn't say that. I'm saying that. Our children were sacrificed. I did it.
I was hoping you were referring to me as young Brian, but I guess it was the other guy. BJ, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this. I really appreciate it. I love a good pushback and disagreement. You stay on hold. We had to send her something, too, for giving us our first call on a Friday.
Can we give away some brand new stuff, Lauren? You want to talk about the brand new stuff we're going to send her?
Yes.
What?
We have some brand new stuff. We have joined in a partnership with Yada Yada Coffee Roasters in Cuyahoga Falls, and they've made us a Mornings with Brian blend.
What?
Yes.
Wow.
So we're going to send BJ a 12-ounce pack of beans for her to make a little cup of coffee.
She gets her first one.
Yay!
Oh, BJ, you get for coffee. Mornings with Brian blend. It must be smooth and
Slightly
handsome,
sweet.
A little tart.
says my wife.
That's funny.
Team thoughts on BJ and what she had to say there. There was a lot there.
Mm-hmm.
Lauren, I would imagine you have all the feels because she's disagreeing with you.
Sure. I think, like you said, Brian, I don't think that we can say we'll find our community at travel sports. We won't find our Christian community there. Our ministry is our family, but that doesn't mean that you don't go to church because your ministry is at home. I think you bring your kids to church, and that's a part of being your ministry is showing them what it looks like to be a part of a church community. And that's how you minister to your family, is showing them that this church community is important.
Well, and if I understand the language used in Scripture by the apostles and Jesus himself, the word for followers of Christ that are not related is family.
Yeah. Mhm.
Like we are adopted into the family of God,
That's
and we
right.
become brothers and sisters. There's neither slave nor free, Jew nor Greek.
Yeah.
We're all one in Christ. And so the idea of even separating your immediate family from your church family, there is some separation, of course, biblically, but I think that implies a weightier value in life to church community.
Yeah, and to note that, Jesus traveled and Paul traveled. Paul, you would more categorize him as a missionary, not a part of a, local church. But he was deeply connected to the local churches that he did know.
Peter didn't travel.
Yes, exactly.
And James and John, they were all in Jerusalem running the church.
Yes, and you see the churches that, like Corinth and Ephesus and, Galatians, you see all of them. Those are local communities. And in that time, people are not moving around. They're not moving from city to city. They are born and raised in those cities, and they have generations and generations of families in that same city, in that same town, village.
Mm-hmm.
And they're making their community there. And that's what I'm talking about. Your local church does still have extreme significance and it should be a priority in your Christian faith.
And what you're describing sounds amazing, but again, I think if I'm in her defense, a lot of people have never experienced what you're talking about.
I totally agree. I see that.
And so they don't really get it. Like, what do you mean? You just hang out on Sunday, we sing songs, there's a message, small group. What? And this is where we have to get to Ron's news here, but I could just kind of drop this in front of us. My friend Nancy Kane and I were in a podcast episode recently chatting about a quote that I'll poorly paraphrase from Stanley Hauerwas, the theologian, where he talks about one of the big flaws of Protestantism in general is that we make faith a me and Jesus thing, and church is that other thing you do, kinda. Where he says the way the Christian life is designed is that church community and regular corporate worship is essentially how you live out your faith. It's not separate from or that thing you add on to it. It's an integral part of being a believer. And I think his description is pretty fair. For a lot of evangelicals, it's like, I do faith, I do my quiet time, I have my friends who are Christians, and we go worship on Sunday. I think what you're saying, Lauren, is the Bible describes something totally different. Mm-hmm. It's a communal living kind of thing, not necessarily to some sort of kibbutz extreme, but maybe. My lovely wife, Sarah, joining us all morning.
Hello.
Oh, I love you so much. Thanks for being on the radio.
Okay.
And we've been chatting a little bit about the travel sports debate, as in there was a survey out from Lifeway about how 30-some% of pastors are like, you should never miss church for sports. But only like 1 in 5 regular parishioners like saying the same thing. Dramatic difference here. And a lot of people are talking about how, they're saying families first ministry, it doesn't last that long. Don't make it a big deal. And Lauren, you're saying, no, it is a big deal. I think I'm saying too. It's difficult to make those decisions when your kids are passionate about sports and such, but what are the comments you're seeing come in?
Sorry. Church is very important for the body of believers. Maybe I'm weird, but the subject of travel sports on Sunday, I really think that is a subject they need to take to God and see what God has to say. I agree that it's a season, but I also want to point out that I don't have kids, but I really think God could have a purpose in that short time. And I also think it's important to have your kids in a Christian setting. I'm
Yeah,
generally
okay.
with Lauren, but if you have a kid who needs to be in travel sports or auto racing or something, I think you build your church around that.
What does that mean? Build your church around that.
Maybe it means you find a church that has services on Saturday that you could go to, or if you can't do that, then you make your community outside of the actual church.
Yeah, I mean, to presume Sunday morning is the only time to do it is totally wrong. That's not even biblical, really. Jesus makes pretty
sure.
clear you can gather whenever you'd like. There's no right answer to that. But
The facts are most churches are still gathering exclusively
Yeah.
on Sunday. Yes, there are some that are doing other times, but for the most part, you're going to have a hard time finding a church that, I mean, we just moved here and it took us a long time finding a church we liked just based on a couple basic parameters, like we need to have people that are close to our age, it needs to be diverse, the preaching needs to be solid. You start narrowing it down further to they need to have Saturday services and you're really shooting yourself in the foot.
Mm-hmm.
it's harder to find in Northeast Ohio than you might imagine. We had an easier time finding that in other communities, I think. But
Oh, yeah.
but yeah, so there you go. What else you got?
My husband's been a travel ball coach for 30 years. Excuse me. We would find a church to go to whatever town we were in.
What do you think of that, Ron?
It's possible. You have to really, really make the effort. I don't know how many people would make the effort because you're going to have to find a church that's got a service that fits in where you don't have a game or a practice scheduled during this away from home tournament, and make sure you go there. There's going to be other things like we went to a tournament in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is close to Hershey, Pennsylvania. So everybody was going to Hershey and touring the factory and all the things you could do there. It was winter, so not exactly winter, but it was cold enough that the theme park was closed. But there were things to do there. And it often is that case. You're going to a location that has touristy things that can be done in your downtime. So you'll be, if you make the point of taking your kids to a church while you're away, you're probably taking them away from their group of friends and some of the events that they're all going to share in.
And I would say that approach to church is a little different. I mean, and this person's fabulous. That's a commitment, by the way, to spend 30 years coaching. Wow, that's impressive to me. But the idea of church is not, I have a relationship with Jesus, and his expectation of me is that I go and I worship him in a building wherever I am and leave. Like the idea that I'm going to a worship service for me and Jesus is not the point. I think it's pretty easy to make that argument in Scripture. I used to think of it that way. You and I were more like, it's a place that you go.
Yep. You check off the box for the week.
It's about fueling me so I have what I need to get through the week to the next Sunday.
But if you look at the early church, I mean, they were sharing meals together. They were sharing, they were not just on Sunday morning. The idea of church, as you were saying before, is not just that individual people sit next to each other and sing the same songs. That's not what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about before, we've just moved here. We're looking for a church. We found a church we like, but it's 45 minutes away. And we said we can't do that because we're not actually going to be able to be a part of that community. We're not going to find people that live nearby us where we're actually going to want to be with them and can go be with them because it's too far to do regularly. We need to find something that's close to home.
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
And I've said before, too, that I don't necessarily blame anyone in particular, but most churches, I would say, and this is going to sound harsh, but most churches, you will not find the community you're describing. It's very rare. Sarah and I were in a church in Chicago where there was a married couples group we were a part of that lived out community together. People would come in there and they'd be wound up from an argument they had, and they'd let it all loose in front of the whole group and allow us to work together on solving.
It was wonderful.
Wasn't it amazing?
Yeah. And we were together with various members of that group, a couple times a week over at each other's houses, picking each other's kids up, going to different functions. Like we were a community.
Or you have a married couples group that goes in and they take turns teaching and everyone sits next to each other and they hold hands and then they say goodbye and have some coffee. Meanwhile, at least 2 or 3 of those marriages are about to die, but nobody says anything and no one knows. That's not how it's supposed to work in a church community.
Mm-mm.
What else are we getting here?
If you teach your kids that church is optional, we can't be surprised when they're adults and they see church as optional or less. Being in a church teaches us deeper doctrine. It's deeper doctrine. It's not all just fellowship.
What do you think of that?
I totally agree. We're saying that, our families come first and our kids come first, and we can't put church above our kids. But then you're showing them that church is optional. If they're in travel sports all the time, when are they going to learn that church is a vital part of the Christian walk?
Yeah, I think you're compartmentalizing things a little bit too much. We're hearing several, families are first ministry, and we totally agree with that. But how are you supposed to minister to your family if you're always running ragged, if you're never in church? I mean, I know some people who do travel sports with their kids, and they love Jesus, but they miss a lot of church. And the child who is in travel sports, the world kind of revolves around them because the schedule is so busy. So I don't even know how you can minister to your own family using that argument if you have a child in travel sports, because the parents can't minister to each other. They can't get filled. They can't properly dedicate time to their other children because this one child has needs that are so great. And it's a really simple solution of just cutting back on that.
Well, and to your point as well, family being the first ministry is a true statement, but it has nothing to do with corporate worship and church.
Right.
It's a totally separate thing. Your family is your first ministry, but that doesn't mean, oh, yeah, and by the way, that means my family being together equals church, which, by the way, also, this is one of my pet peeves, the whole 2 or 3 are gathered thing. Mm-hmm. Technically, when you look at where that's quoted, that has to do with church discipline, not just because Sarah and I are together at home, suddenly it's a worship service. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a different subject, I suppose. Our team, during that last song, was kind of processing what we're seeing happen here. And Daria, I loved your observation, if you don't mind sharing that.
Yeah, so a couple months back, we were talking about when is it okay to miss church? Is it ever okay to miss church? And we kind of came to the conclusion that, if you're on vacation, sometimes you just have a lot going on and you just need a break. So we're talking maybe 4 or 5 times a year you might be missing church. And people were angry. There's no excuse for ever missing church. And today we're talking about missing church quite more frequently for travel sports. I don't think a lot of people realize it's a year-long commitment. So for majority of the year, you're missing at least 1, maybe 2 Sundays a month or more. And we're getting a lot of pushback. And I think one of the reasons for that is we, as an American society, we worship sports, but I think we also worship children. And children are great, but I think we focus our lives around them in a way that's unhealthy. We've seen this a lot with other conversations we've had with, for example, Lauren and I saying we call our parents once a week, and that means you hate them because you don't call them daily. Because these people, I think they've put their focus and their joy in the wrong thing, which should be Jesus. Other things can be good, but they should not be the most good.
Yeah, you're right. We did hint. We're like, maybe every once in a while you could skip. How dare you? Well, but sports, though, guys. I mean, you could miss all year for that. I know I'm being melodramatic, but it's pretty wild. I'm a little surprised by that. Who would have thought at Moody Radio, WCRF since 1958, it'd be a little edgy to suggest that you should prioritize church over sports. What do you have coming in here?
I think it's because it sounds like we're saying prioritize church over your kids.
I don't know how it sounds like that.
I don't know. I don't know either.
I agree with you. that that's how some are taking it. But that's because some people believe that maybe you should prioritize your kids.
And we've lost the actual importance of what church is.
Showing your kids this community of believers and showing them your love for Jesus is prioritizing your children. That doesn't mean there aren't other activities they can still do to enjoy their childhood.
It's almost like a couple weeks ago we should have brought up a reason to skip church is sports, and then people would have not been upset. You should go if you're sick. You should go if you're really overwhelmed. What if you got your kid at a soccer game? Who cares? You could turn the sidelines into a worship service. I hate to be rude, but that's what people are kind of implying is that, oh, no, you can create your church community at the game. No, you can't.
There's no elders there. There's no deacons there. There's no pastors there.
There's no one holding you accountable for your sin because most of the people on the sidelines are not Christian.
And even if they are, there's no elders there.
Because what you're doing
There's
is
no pastors there.
you're yelling at the ref and you're cheering for your kid. I mean, you should see my wife at a soccer game. It's like she forgets she's a Christian sometimes.
Brian,
I'm just kidding.
Brian.
I'm just kidding.
I am a soccer mom. Yes, I am.
No, that came out sideways.
Yeah, you
didn't
say
it?
sorry.
I'm sorry, Sarah. That came out sideways.
That's okay. I don't think anyone expected anything different.
You get super excited on the sidelines.
Oh, yeah. I'm very animated.
And so if I tried to turn the sidelines into a small group, how would that make you feel?
That's weird. I mean,
You'd be like,
it's
I'm
just
watching
not-
the game, Brian.
Yeah. I don't know.
All right. 440-546-2255. What else you got?
Someone said, growing up in the South, we didn't have sports that happened on Sundays. It's changed since I've moved to Ohio. It's more frequent. However, it seems that families are able to have community with the church growing together and serving together outside of attending a worship service, such as going to a small group or home group gatherings. They gather together during the week, and that's more intimate than attending a large gathering on Sunday. Personally, I'm more challenged and held accountable by my home group than I am an entire body of congregation that I'm a part of.
Okay. Now, honestly, the house church movement that happens in our country, I think, is oftentimes more resembling what the scriptures are expecting of life, where you're sharing meals, you're sharing time, accountability. If somebody were really heavily involved in sports and therefore start a house church, I don't know that I have an objection
during
to that.
the week. Yeah, my only concern about that is that if you're just saying just a small group where there's no formal leadership, there's no like elders or there's no pastor, and you're not teaching the word and you're just like talking about like your feelings and you're not actually digging into the word, that's a problem in a small group. But if you're doing that, if you're, getting into the word and you're, spurring each other on and there's like a leadership there and you're able to hold each other accountable, that all those things are in place, it's great.
And by the way, you also should be probably having communion.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You should be saying
Sacraments,
creeds together.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ordinances.
But that could be a legitimate alternative.
Yep.
And you meet on, I don't know, Thursday afternoon. Who knows? 440-546-2255. You got some more comments coming in here?
Someone said we do over-prioritize our kids for sure. We also segment them from larger society, which really concerns me.
Yeah.
Sarah, you were saying something to that ilk during the break.
Yeah, I think it comes down to that parents are having their lives revolve around their kids and wanting them to be happy. Like, we got one text that says, what if they have to be? No kids have to be in these sports. Whatever they're learning from it, they can learn in other ways. And so, but even like, I mean, that's just how our society is now. You pick a restaurant because that's where your kids want to go instead of having them learn to adjust to the restaurant you want. You watch shows that are what the kids want to watch. You go to bed based off of when the kids are going to bed. It's like, no, there needs to be a better balance of the kids are part of the life, not the whole thing.
Yeah, and we don't say that from a position of, this is at least my interpretation. I wonder what you think of this, my love. The fact that we have 5 kids has forced us into that position.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if we would have had one kid, I would have spoiled that kid. If Grace was our only one, I would have spoiled her. I would have bought her whatever she wanted. I would have just done whatever. Like,
Oh, yes.
I know I would have.
Like with 5, we can't do what they want to do.
Well, no.
In fact, most of the time, none of them get what they want. And it's only because we can't. Not because we choose that for them. You follow what I mean? And so we're forced into this position of you can't be a priority. There's just too many of you.
Yeah, we can't have a kid be in a traveling sport because then one child would be determining our family schedule, and that's not going to happen.
And it's already close to that with Rec League.
Yeah, it is. Like, we have single elimination tournament this weekend, and
Oh boy, I
mean,
forgot about that.
It's rec travel, so it's travel around our area, like an hour away, and so that's.
But that destroys a Saturday.
But then we also both don't go. If there are times where he wishes everyone can come to his game, and he has a hard time
That
with.
is so precious.
It's really cute, but it's like, no, we can't have our whole family's day all about you. Nope.
No.
I have other stuff I need to do. Dad's gonna go, or Dad has stuff to do. I'm gonna go to the game.
Yeah, I don't recommend necessarily, particularly in this economy, having 5 children. But what I can tell you is that we're not speaking from a position of self-righteousness that we've made some sort of like ideological decision and like moral decision. Don't take it that way. Like, it's still hard. Like, I wish our kids could do more, but they just can't. So, the end.
Well, I'm thinking too about the impact on marriages. Never mind the other children who, like I said, sometimes one child gets all the focus because they're doing traveling sports. You and your spouse don't have any time together.
Yeah.
You don't have any time as like a family, like couple kids bored while we all watch this one play. It's not really quality family time.
No.
It's been a busy week, and you and I have separately texted on occasion. I miss you.
Yeah, because
We
we're
live
just
together.
we're just high-fiving each other as
you
we're
pass
running
by.
kids places. But yeah, and I know some people use the argument like, what if your kid is really good at a sport? And it's like, kids can learn. It's a good lesson to play with kids that aren't as good a skilled as you. It's a good lesson of how to be a team player, and even the best soccer player in middle school right now probably won't go to college on full ride scholarship. Like, sorry, you're not not going to play. You're not David Beckham.
And that's the thing. I'll be the guy to tell you, whoever you are that goes, yeah, but my kid's really good. You don't understand. He's like the best kid in our community. Yeah, here's how it's going to play out. Get ready. You're going to ruin your family life. You're going to put all your money into this. The kid's either going to quit after high school and not want to play anymore because they're so sick of it, or they're going to go to college on some sort of scholarship and find out they're not actually that good. And maybe slide in their studies a little bit and never play professionally. But what if no, your kid will not play professionally. No. And so if you can accept that from the outset, like your kid's not going to make a living doing this, maybe that changes the whole game.
And I think you can
For
let
lack
your
of a
kids.
better term.
I think you can let your kids dream. Like, don't crush your kids'
I don't know,
dreams.
though.
You can, but you can balance that with like, this is reality. Like, head in the clouds, feet on the ground.
But if you got a middle schooler saying they're going to play pro ball and there's no chance, I think you're doing them a disservice letting them dream like that. That's a ridiculous dream.
I went to high school at a small Christian school in Illinois, and I had 2 kids that they weren't in the same grade as me, I don't think, but around my age. They both played pro football.
What?
And they didn't do like travel sports. They played for our school,
Wow.
and they did like, training camps and stuff like that in the summer. And they went pro, both of them.
Wow. They went to church too, I bet, huh?
They did.
Wow.
Ron, do you know Don Beebe?
Yes.
It's his son, Chad
Okay.
Beebe. Yeah, and then another guy.
Green
Cool
Bay
name.
Packer, I believe.
Why?
Yeah.
You're making my theory fall apart, though, if I'm saying the odds are you won't. You're like, 2 people I knew did.
No, but even if they do, why have we made going pro the measure for success, especially when we're talking about children? Like, they don't need to be thinking about their careers, their kids.
Right.
But when you think about these pro ball players, their lives are a mess.
Especially football.
Especially football players,
Their
because
bodies are destroyed.
right, they die very young, or they commit domestic violence, and it's not entirely their fault because they've had so many concussions. They're not thinking straight.